groups and agencies. There was another treatment center that moved in that wasn't associated with the state, but they did patient treatment in here. And then also the school district used this facility for some of their programming. You can see that there was some sort of glue project that went awry on that wall. And that was most likely from the school district. There's also some posters. You can see remnants of posters upstairs. These are the airflow things above the doors that I was talking about, where there's direct access to outdoor air funneled into some of the different rooms. There's also some above that doorway there. And then there's several historic photos on the wall. There's one of the surgery room right there. It says clinical building. This roof right here, and you can see the side of it, this is the building that we're in right now, the Coleman building, and it is adjacent to the Denny building, which is that building right there. And you can see the archway and just the beautiful architecture. This is the hospital right next door to us. It's 112,000 square feet. There's an aerial of it here. This is actually a current modern aerial from a couple years ago that we did with a drone. But the south side, this is south, so this is north facing. So the south end of the building was constructed first, and then the north end was completed in 1938, which kind of made this figure eight shape to it. And it also created these lovely outdoor courtyards. Again, thinking about bringing the patients outdoors, but still maintaining safety and accessibility. They had these courtyards that the patients could spend time in outside. Very overgrown now. I'm sure it was much better kept when it was operating. Outside of the hospital, this is the grand entrance. It had the flowers and the circular driveway and the big beautiful entrance. This doesn't exist as it is seen right now because they built another building and attached it right there, and that's the Douglas building, which you can kind of see. It's on the other side of the chain link fence. Most recently, the Douglas building housed Pioneer Center North, and they moved out several years ago, but that is just built right up against this beautiful grand entrance. So, Douglas building was built in 1962, and it was kind of at the time a state-of-the-art receiving and treatment addition to the hospital. It does not have the same architecture as the rest of the campus and the buildings do. It doesn't look like anything else on campus, so it kind of sticks out a little bit. But it was an important part of the growth and expansion, even in the 60s, when they were still in development mode of the hospital. And then this picture over here, this is a really cool one. This building here, this is the Barclay Hall. And if you were to keep looking this way, if the picture expanded, it would be Coleman right here next door. So this building would be in that big open space right there next to this one. The buildings originally were lettered or numbered, depending on men or women's wards. So I think women's wards were lettered, and men's wards were numbered. So A, B, C, and 1, 2, 3. All the women's wards were on the west end of the campus, and the men's wards were on the east end because they were closer to the farm, which many of the men worked on the farms, which just made it more convenient for them. And then later, a naming committee got together and said, well, we don't like 1, 2, 3, and ABC, so let's come up with names. And they decided to name the buildings after famous Washington people in history, like historic figures. So Coleman is named after John Coleman, who was, I believe, a railroad pioneer. The Coleman Dock in Seattle also bears the same name for Mr. Coleman. The Denny building is named after Arthur Denny, a founding father of Seattle. And Denny Way in Seattle is also named after Arthur Denny. And Elliott, which is no longer standing, it's between Denny. So when they named them, they did it alphabetically. So there's no A, which is really weird. We haven't found any record of A, but it went Barclay, Coleman, Denny, Elliott, Fraser Gray, and Horton. So Elliott and Horton are no longer standing, but their foundations are still visible. And our team put some split rail fence around the foundation, so you can walk up to the fence and see it, but it's really not safe to walk on, so we put the split rail fence up to just keep people safe and not tripping or falling into a hole or something. Not like there's a big hole, but trip on a hole. But one of the remarkable things about this campus is there's deer. And right now, there's several deer that have babies. One mama has triplets, and there's two that each have twins. You'll see them because they're not shy. They walk around and they kind of just mix in with the students who are here, and they're not afraid of anything, it seems like, but they're so sweet. We got a call one time at our office saying, "Why do you have the deer in pens?" It's like, what are you talking about? Well, a deer had gotten on the inside of the split rail fence on the foundation. I was just walking around, and somebody thought we were wrangling deer on the campus, so it was kind of funny. Had to piece that one together. But I think the presence of the deer and the other wildlife is just a testament to how peaceful and calm and quiet this space is. And that was by design. This is the first master planned campus in the state of Washington. So you think of the University of Washington, which predates this, it was built in the 1860s. This was the first master planned campus, which means they looked at building size and building design and building orientation all in a comprehensive way with landscape architecture in this long-range vision on how can this campus make an impact for the patients today, patients tomorrow, and they really put a lot of thought and intention into all of that. The landscape architects was the Olmsted firm. Frederick Olmsted Sr. was the gentleman who designed Central Park in New York, and his two sons did this campus, landscaping on this campus. There's a beautiful aerial of the whole campus upstairs, and you can kind of see, it shows the grand entrance, so it's probably in the 50s maybe. You can see how there's no sharp corners on the roads. Everything is kind of sweeping and gradual and soft, and that's the intent behind building this campus and putting it all together in a peaceful, calm, and healing way for the patients who lived here. At its peak in the 1940s, there were 2,200 patients living on campus and probably about 300 staff. So imagine 2,500 people in this 200-acre space. It's like a city within a city. I don't know how big Cedar Woolley was at that time, but probably close to the same size, just right next door to each other. So it's pretty remarkable to learn about that. And it was largely a self-sustaining campus. We'll go upstairs and see some pictures of the barns from the farm side, which is over in the NSRA side. But they grew a lot of their food. They had award-winning dairy herd. They had goats and pigs. They had peacocks, which I don't know what those were for, but they might have just to bring joy to the patients because they're beautiful. But it's fascinating to see how progressive and forward-thinking a lot of the planning that went into this campus and the hospital program, how impactful that was. So, any questions? A few other photos of just, historic. This is a day room similar to this one. There's a another surgery room photo there. For student nurses, I should say. Every 3 months, a new kind of cohort of student nurses would come through, and this was an excellent teaching hospital that partnered with the University of Washington and later on Skagit Valley College. The picture on the far left is a picture of the rotunda from inside the Trevennan Hall. It's just beautiful. Had a grand spiral staircase and just beautiful architecture. The student nurses also had some pretty strict rules when living in Trevennan. There was a matron of Trevennan Hall, and she kept close eye on all the young student nurses, but they couldn't have any food in their room except fruit. They couldn't put any tacks in the wall. They couldn't have any overnight company. What could they do? They couldn't play the piano before. They had a grand piano in the hall. They couldn't play it before 4 p.m. because the night shift was sleeping. There's all these little things that I think about the rules I have for my kids. I'm like, yeah, I'd do that too. Only fruit. Was talking about how she was a student nurse here, and I said, did you live in Trevennan? And she said, no, I was one of two nurses in the cohort that, because I lived in Bellingham, I was able to drive back and forth and not live on campus. One of two. So, yeah. I thought, well, you missed out. You could have been given this tour for me. that space. Single room occupancy was not a privilege. It meant you were probably disruptive, and they tried to limit that disruption from bothering the other patients or upsetting them. You'll notice this big square in the ceiling. This was a glass ceiling, so kind of along the same lines as the focus on natural light, fresh air, skylights in the roof would shine sunlight down on this glass ceiling and just light up the entire space up here. Another way of bringing more natural light in from under just the windows. But just really focused on the nature healing and the natural light and fresh air. There's pictures of the farm over here. We talked about that, largely self-sustaining. If they didn't grow it on campus, they probably traded with another institution, either another hospital or state prison. You know, they did a lot of trading with what they were able to grow here and what somebody else was able to grow elsewhere. You see the draft horses there. Here's some pictures inside rooms and hallways and the wards and hospital. And this is a great view of Denny too. You can kind of see the red tile roofs and I don't know if I mentioned the chute that comes out of the second story down below, that's a fire escape.
I thought it was a laundry chute.
No, it's a fire escape. If you can imagine hundreds of patients, some probably with limited mobility, getting them downstairs in a fire evacuation.
A slide seems effective.
Yes, the chute was much more efficient in getting people downstairs from above. So.
Well, now we can tell our kids it was a slide and not be like, oh.
Yeah, I heard, I can't verify this, but I have heard that whenever it did get used, everybody got a tetanus shot because it's just metal outdoor chute. So there's probably some rough edges that weren't that clean.
Ouch.
These pictures over here show some of the ward buildings. You see these octagonal buildings here. You can see them visibly on the Fraser and Gray ward buildings on the other side of the hospital. These are airports. Again, rooms that allow fresh air and light to come in for patient healing. The Coleman building also had two of these, one outside this window and one outside that window. It's hard to tell all the grass is dead, but in the winter time when the grass is really green, you can see kind of where it is located. Kind of where the grass is more dead. And then this photo on the wall here, this is the aerial that I mentioned before that shows the grand entrance still intact on the south end of the hospital. Here's the farm over here. This is, it's hard to tell, but it's most likely like apple orchard or something along here. The building that we are in is right here. This is Coleman. And this is Barkley, which I mentioned before, and then the canal that kind of runs through there. And then this is the entrance. There's a gatehouse right here, and then the fork in the road. And like I said, you'll notice there's no sharp corners. It's just really sweeping and gentle on the roadways and the design, trees that kind of move around and just create that beautiful space. And like I said, the main hospital and then the hub. So Barkley, Coleman, Denny, Elliott, Fraser, Gray, Courtney. So it's kind of cool to see this. You can kind of see the top of the airplane wing. And then Goat Hill is right here. They blasted out a big hole in the mountain to serve as a reservoir, which is still up there, but it's covered. But we are working at restoring the trail system that will take you up Goat Hill so people can hike up there and kind of see everything. And it's a beautiful view up there. That's in the works. It's not quite ready yet, but it's in the works. And then this is all the county-owned property, about 700 acres. All the farm buildings that you can still see, lots and lots of trails through there, some that have connected back to our campus. Yeah, it's pretty cool. So this room has a couple cool features in it. The first one being the nurses' station. This is a nurses' station where meds were delivered out of this window here. We have a little sink and everything. You can see some of the pictures of the nurses and students, some of the other staff. This room, oh, sorry. This room in here was a prep kitchen. You're free to go in. I'll stand out here so I can talk at you. The prep kitchen was used, if you look outside the window, there's kind of a diagonal sidewalk that kind of goes to the upper right. That leads to the main kitchen. And then meals were prepared in the main kitchen and brought over to this prep kitchen. This rectangular board here is where the dumbwaiter was. So they would come from on carts, they would come along that diagonal sidewalk, come in downstairs and bring the food up on this dumbwaiter. This is a funny quote I mentioned earlier.
That's funny.
Baked beans was a mistake. I'm sure there was plenty of fun reactions to that. And then they realized what a fire safety risk that was, so then they went with the stucco. Yeah. So this is the main entrance. This is where the parking lot is now. Yeah, it's such a beautiful, beautiful building. The lead glass windows and everything. Any questions? Okay, we're gonna hit one more stop. That went on in the hospital for women, it was sewing and house cleaning and that sort of thing. But for sewing, the female patients would sew and repair a lot of the linens that were used on campus. They would do some house cleaning in the nurses' quarters or the superintendent's house. Any area that wasn't used by other patients, they would do that. But sewing was a big part of their occupational therapy in that program. For the men worked on the farm a lot. On the north end of the campus that's now occupied by Job Corps, this first row of buildings are mostly the dorms, and then on beyond that, those are the trade buildings. So they have welding and masonry and woodworking. Lots of the trade buildings are now used as classrooms. Instead of masonry equipment, it's computers. So, you're in Homeland Security program. So all the students here today, I think we have about 14 Job Corps students here today that are volunteering. They've been helping with parking and ushering on our tours, and they're all involved, or they're all in the Homeland Security program through Job Corps. Let's see, sorry to put you on the spot, Leah, but you have culinary arts, and IT, and office administration, and Homeland Security.
And then we also have NAT class, IT class.
Like networking stuff? Yeah.
And then IT, but it's advanced IT, so people from other job corps who are administrative.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they can come over here
Okay.
and do it advanced.
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome. So we, from a port perspective, we love having Job Corps on the campus. Their focus on workforce development and training very much aligns with our mission of job creation and economic development opportunities for the community. Somebody asked in a previous group about, well, why don't you just make this a new mental hospital and kind of remodel everything? And that's not the port's mission. Although a very valuable and important mission, it's not our mission. Our contribution to the community is the job creation and the economic benefit that builds a better tax base to hopefully support programs that are needed. And yeah, that was part of the process of having the property come under local ownership, is identifying those needs. There was 5 goals with the partner meetings and the community meetings that we had, 5 goals that were established, and one of them was restoring public access. So it took about a year to do that, from taking ownership to kind of opening the doors to the campus. Most of that time was addressing, okay, what's it going to look like when the public comes on here after 45 years of being closed? So developing trails on the campus, developing the historic route for people to follow, putting up the split rail fence to separate the closed campus of Job Corps to the open public area for the public to enjoy at the Swick Center Historic Core. Later on came interpretive signs, so people can kind of learn more as they walk. And it's just been a fantastic way of introducing the public to the campus really for the first time. Oh, see, that's why I turned mine off. But it's been great. And that also allowed us the time from then to now to really see how the community was using using the property as well. You know, we put like mud mitts in important locations and garbage cans, and our team who work on the Swift Center site daily have built benches, you know, repurposing things from historic areas and creating benches to put along the trail system, graveling and grading and that sort of thing. We work very closely with Skagit Trail Builders, who are fantastic. They've built, gosh, I was reading their stats. I think they've had 18 work parties and 205 volunteers and 4,000 hours of volunteer time given in just the past year alone to kind of rebuild or restore or build new trails throughout the NSRA area, as well as connections to the Swift Center campus. So,
I walk here nearly every day on my lunch hour, and it's wonderful.
Thank you, thank you. We are always impressed whenever we come out here. There's just people everywhere and enjoying it. They're walkers. If you look out that first window off to the distance to the right, you can see the smokestack still.
Yeah, kind
The
of.
powerhouse is, like I said before, the powerhouse is still operating. The boilers create heat that goes through the steam tunnels and heat the buildings in the wintertime.
I thought that big stack
There
was
are-
like a crematorium.
What's that?
Is that crematorium?
The crematorium's gone.
I thought that was a big stack.
Thank God.
Oh, no, it was further east, I think. Yeah. But there are tunnels throughout the campus. People ask me all the time, were cadavers moved from here to the morgue with the tunnels? No, that didn't happen. There isn't enough room in the tunnels for that. They're literally just the piping, and now, with all the rural broadband infrastructure that the Port's been working on, we have fiber here on campus as well. So the fiber lines run through the tunnels as well. And then you can see some of the men working in the shops and on the farm buildings for their occupational therapy. This space right here looks like there should be a door, and that's because there once was a door. Similar to the air courts downstairs, this was big double doors that could open up with metal mesh on the inside, just to get fresh air in this. So this was kind of like the upstairs air court, similar to what was downstairs in the octagonal buildings. But yeah, again, fresh air and natural light was a big part of the healing process for patients. Some of these buildings, like the Ward buildings, this one, and Fraser and Gray on the other side of the Denny building, you can see some of these doors on the second floor. It's like, is that a door to nowhere? But it was just to open and get fresh air coming through. Any questions?